All right, everyone. Welcome back. Everyone being Cody Willard from tradingwithcody.com. Dan Geraci with that nice free fall aerospace logo up there. It's like you're part of some molecular orb or something.
He
Nice
looks like he's
background.
free falling through space,
There you
frankly.
go.
That's right.
And Sanatsi, who Cody will allow to speak when he deems fit. So
No, he has a party going on in the background with his wife. So
I know.
See, Cabana, totally
all right.
not. Dan, you can't free fall in space. What is this?
Well, actually, everything in space is in a state of free fall. So
It's all falling together at the same pace.
due to gravitational pull, anything in orbit would be in free fall, except the fact that it's moving at just the right speed, 17,500 miles an hour, to stay in orbit.
Okay, all right.
So,
but I guess all right. Away
that's the
from
story.
Orbit,
I'm sticking to
if
it.
you're not in orbit, you're not in free fall.
Well, actually, you are, because when you're out of Earth orbit, you're being pulled by something. It could be the sun. It could be closer to the moon, and you're in the moon's gravity. You go out towards Mars, you could be in free fall from Martian gravity. There's always gravity at work. The great weak force, as it's called. You're always being pulled in some direction by something when you're in space, however slight.
Fascinating.
It's a
All right, then.
beautiful
Free fall's
thing.
a great name, then.
There you go.
Yeah, it wasn't when they thought of it, but we figured out a way to explain it. So, as opposed to free for all,
space news? What do we have space news wise?
We got some like asteroid samples. I saw that, right?
Yes.
Or did we discuss that last week?
We hit on that last week, but that's all right. We hit it again.
That's what constipated astronomers get, asteroids. So there's a dad joke for you, Cody. So I posted an article to the SKTLs chat about an article that came up regarding debris. So there's two companies, Astroscale, which is Japanese, but it's their UK subsidiary, and Clear Space. Both have contracts to remove a couple of dead satellites from orbit in 2026. And they've each developed robotic spacecraft, and they passed the critical design review around the systems requirements to be able to pull it off. So they're both going to go up, go over to one or two satellites. The satellites haven't been named yet, but they will be shortly. And then they're going to retrieve these satellites and take them to where they're supposed to take them, and either place them in a different orbit or deorbit them. But it's to prove out this capability. These are two dead satellites that are sitting in a pretty heavy traffic zone in low Earth orbit. So hopefully they can pull this off. But we're still, having said that, a few years away from this actually happening.
Dan, feet to fire, what are the odds that there are more collisions of satellites or whatever else in low Earth orbit in the next year or two?
I think collisions of satellites is relatively low, just because they're all put in precise locations and tracked constantly, and the ability to move them is there. What we don't have control over is what adversaries like China or Russia do, where they decide to slam one into another for what they would call an experiment, create 1,200 pieces of debris, which then become a problem for every other satellite and the International Space Station. So
what are the odds that Russia and China do those quote unquote experiments in the next
I'd say
years?
Well, if history's any indicator, I'd say that there's a pretty good chance that they would do something. Things are escalating anyway, as we all know, unfortunately, geopolitically, and that's one area where, you can almost get away with pretty much anything. Um, and so, you know, I I think it would be naive to assume that they don't do anything for the next 2 years. That's, to me, that's the bigger issue. It just would be naive.
Why would they do it? It seems counterproductive to the world. Like it's counterproductive to their own satellite aspirations. Is it because the U.S. has already have such a
We
presence there?
we
and
have
they
more to
can mess
lose.
with us?
We have more to lose, um, and they want to prove with a live test that they're capable of doing it. So this would be the equivalent of setting off nuclear, doing nuclear weapons testing in the 40s, prior to dropping the bomb. And then after that, I think, it's their way of saying, see what we can do. Um, we're a threat. You should be concerned. Go spend more money trying to prepare for this. And we could do the same thing. We just don't, if we're doing it, no one's talking about it, including the Chinese. But we don't need to provoke them. They do this stuff on their own. And Russia's done it as well. And they just claim it's an experiment. Or, gee, we're trying to shoot something down from the surface of the earth. We're trying to destroy a satellite in space. Oops, it created debris.
Dan, does Iran or North Korea have capability to try to blow up satellites in low Earth orbit?
No, I mean, North Korea is still they tried to put up their first reconnaissance satellite, and it ended up,
it's got to be easier to blow satellites
searching for
up.
fish.
It's got to be easy. Is it easier to blow up a satellite than to put a satellite up in orbit successfully?
Well, getting it up there is a whole set of orbital, dynamics problems. Once you're up there, then you have to have the ability to control and move the satellite in 3 dimensions and target, which is not at all easy. And it takes a lot of fuel, which meant you had to bring up a lot more, which meant that it was a heavier launch, which meant that it was a more difficult launch. So they don't. Iran, who knows what capabilities they have? Who knows, what they've gotten from other countries. I don't expect that they would. I think if they had it, they would have used it already. I think they're doing enough damage right now on the ground, which is where they seem to be very well equipped, if you will. So they're not the ones we need to worry about. We need to worry about China, because if one of those countries did something, it would be easy enough to retaliate, and they wouldn't have enough assets to do widespread damage. They might damage one, but it's not like they've got 3,000 of them up there now and the ability to knock satellites out. We'd know as the minute they launch something, we'd know. So, as we would with China, but China wouldn't do a one-off if it was an attack. They would launch quite a wave. If they're going to blind us, they're going to blind us in one fell swoop, not nickeling and diming us every day. So,
okay, Cabana, you have any questions on
fun stuff to consider.
Yeah, let's. But there's so much of the space revolution is initially, it's been for decades a governmental / military kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just within the last 10 years has there started to been a more serious increase in commercial applications. I mean, certainly, Sirius XM and satellite TV and things like that. Direct TV were, space companies already, but those were, few and far between, with limited applications outside of communications or video or audio.
The thing, though, that you have to remember with this is that while all of the development for most things technological has military origins, especially the stuff we're talking about, there's a very specific effort, departments, people inside the military complex whose job it is to feed those newly developed technologies to the private sector over time once they've been matured and there's no risk of giving up a secret. They'll transfer that stuff into the commercial sector to be used for public use, public good, to drive business, and to then further the next wave of development and innovation on that technology. And DARPA, the big black budget research arm of the Pentagon, they have teams whose sole job it is to look at the commercial downstream applications of all the secret stuff they're working on. And they're working on stuff now for deployment in 10 or 20 years. So they're already going to have a plan that says we're going to launch this in 15 years, and 5 years later, this is where the commercial application is, and we'll feed that out into the market. And that's been going on since the 40s. So a lot of what we're seeing, comes from that, military, industrial, R&D world, and we get to use it much later. Most stuff that's revealed to the public, if a new weapon system were to be used today because a bigger war breaks out and we have to get involved, and we introduce a new weapon like we did the stealth fighters in Iraq for Desert Storm, it's 20-year-old technology. You can count on that. And those fighters are 20-year-old technologies when we launched them with the stealth capability.
All right. Cabana, what happened in crypto today? Why'd Bitcoin crash? Not crash. Bitcoin sold off.
Like we're under 27,000. It's like
that's why I rephrased it. But it was instantly down. It was down 3%. Why hasn't Bitcoin rallied off the war in the Middle East? Gold has rallied 5%. Bitcoin's down 5 to 10%.
I think Bitcoin is just its own thing until the halvening, and it'll do its own halvening cycle. So before say first quarter next year, it's kind of just like hanging out like it always does, and we'll get a move kind of leading up to the halvening, and then probably a good year next year.
Okay,
it'll be interesting.
People want it to fit into a narrative so bad, but it's just it's not there yet. So sorry, Dan.
Well, no, I was just going to say that in the geopolitical world, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what role crypto plays with other governments, and just the way they would hoard different currencies for strategic reasons. What happens to crypto if, we find out that, an adversary country is potentially trying to manipulate cryptocurrency? That's going to be a whole other thing, because we have no history. We just know what happens to currency.
We don't have nations doing it. We only have Sam Bankman-Fried's doing it.
Yeah, small nations. Yes,
small.
Did you hear some of the testimony
nations
that Caroline had over the past 2 days? It's crazy. Like, it's supposed to be crypto, right? So, but Sam was trying to battle Binance and CZ, and trying to enforce or get the government to regulate them and not him, kind of thing. It's just like, oh my gosh, like crypto's not.
Well, we know we had friends in power.
What stood out to me most in reading Michael Lewis's excerpts from his book, I haven't bought the book yet. I think it got released the day the trial started on Monday, but I read several excerpts from it, and I've listened to some, not listened, but I've read some of the testimony later in the New York Post or whatever I happened to be reading at the time. And, what stands out to me most is how frivolous they were with the money that, the brokerage firm and the hedge fund that these are a crypto brokerage firm, a crypto hedge fund. And not only did it not have a Chinese wall between it, they just commingled it. I was just move it over here.
We need some over here.
Move back to there if we need it. If someone needs their money, we'll find it. At one point, very early on, when they only were running like $50 million or something, they sent $4 million of Ripple somewhere and never found it. And it was months later they found it in South Korea on some crypto brokerage firm there, and the broker there was like, we found the guys who sent us the $4 million of Ripple.
Yeah.
But the fact that they just well, like Sam,
they're still finding stuff.
Like, we'll find it. It'll be fine.
It's
they sprinkled around money into various like startups and whatnot, and one of them, like, they lost on a lot of these, but one of them, I forget the name of it. It's an AI startup. It'll probably IPO in the next year or so. It starts with an A, but
of course
that actually took off, and it's probably going to be like a multi-billion-dollar valuation, and that's
Anthropic?
The one.
Is Anthropic
Yes,
the name
Anthropic.
of it?
And
Amazon just invested in Anthropic to the tune of like a couple $1 billion.
Yeah.
At a multi-$10 billion valuation for the company. I was not aware of the SBF FTX.
Yeah, so they tossed some money in that, and they actually, like, that's part of the stuff that they can probably maybe recover, because it's worth more now than it was, back then on the ground floor whenever they got in. But
it just takes one idiot to screw it up for everybody.
Right, but the money that they were throwing around was real money. It wasn't just crypto nonsense. The FTX token went to zero, of course, but the $15 million he donated to Biden, or the $5 million he donated to some Republican guy, that stuff was real money, and that was used. And now, I suppose they tried to pay it back. Money's fungible, so it got paid back in some sense. But to go back to your point there, it is fascinating and disheartening to hear just how willy-nilly and frivolous they were with everyone's hard-earned money that they were supposedly supposed to be taken care of.
And that's why decentralized exchanges are what crypto is about. And you don't need middlemen or people like in control of crypto exchanges. Like, it's just completely backwards. And
by the way, he donated $80 million.
Of course he did.
40 to Democrats, and he says he donated the same amount to Republicans. So you think about, what was really going on. You bet he wanted to make sure he was protected.
Yes, absolutely. And you, again, using other people's money. This was not his money to be donating. But
hey, OPM, baby, that's it. When you're building something, it's other people's money. And frankly, it's that old thing when on Wall Street, when we've had all these nefarious actors and trading, scams where they've built billions of dollars off the balance sheet of a major investment firm. It's the old thing. If you're gonna break the rules, do it really, really big, because they're never going to get the money back from you, and you're still going to get punished. But if you go and do all that work for a couple $1 million, you're an idiot. Make it $1 billion if you're going to do it.
Any word from Richard Hart overseas? Do we know what's going on with the Hex founder?
No, it was his birthday the other day. So
did he come online and say "Wish me happy birthday" or anything?
Did you send him a card or something, or what?
No, it was a funny tweet. He was like, Twitter won't let you post like just audio, so I have to make a movie, and it was just like a thumbs up of like, hey, it's my birthday, thank you for all the wishes, or something like that.
How old is he?
I think he's mid-40s. Yeah. So, but no, I guess the SEC deadline is November.
What deadline? Is it a deadline for him to show up at court, or a deadline?
No, a deadline for, I guess, a response for like the box checking the formal forms, like attorneys and attorneys. I personally don't think there will be a response, just because he's kind of just drifted off right now.
Is he ever coming back to the United States? Feet to fire, 5 years. Richard Hart has been back in the U.S.
Yeah, because his mom lives here, and I think she's got some health issues, and I don't think he could stay away. But I don't know. 5 years.
That's a long time.
Yeah, I'd say yeah, but I'd say 2 or 3, probably not. Speaking of, you brought up books earlier. have you read either or any of you three read Chip War yet?
No.
Chip War?
Chip War?
Cody, I would actually recommend that just because of the position in Intel and your discussion of foundries and whatnot. But it's I'll pull it up here. But I read this over vacation. That's why I wanted to bring it up. But it was really interesting because obviously it talks about China and the United States, Taiwan semi, the importance of Taiwan. But it actually, I mean, it's a long read. It was like, I don't know, 12-hour audiobook or something like that. But it basically went through the entire history of semiconductors, through all the wars that we've had, the technology, how it's advanced, how the military kind of like dictated the original pace of production. And
to
then
look back to our point earlier,
transition over to consumers, and then it kind of wraps up with the China, Taiwanese, United States conflict. It's really, really good. I haven't learned that much about the history of anything since I'd read some other book on, I think it was like Saifedean's Bitcoin standard about the history of money and stuff like that. Those are interesting. But I would recommend it. It's
Bryce is putting the finishing touches on our own semiconductor book. It will be called The Great Semiconductor Shift. Something like that. He's got a couple of cool different names for it. I messed up the actual name, but just a teaser. We will be talking about 40 to 50 different semiconductor companies, analyzing each individual one, including how they fit into the foundry versus fabless versus fab full company.
This goes in depth on all of it. Probably mentions, any historical company out there, like the ASMLs, like global foundries, things that aren't even in existence anymore. Like I said, the history, all the CEOs, the key figures over the years of the Intels and the Taiwan semis, and their relationships and how it all tied together. It's really, really interesting. So
that is cool. By the way, put on make me full screen again, will you?
A wafer.
Yeah, right there.
That's a big one.
It's an Intel something. Took it out of a computer the other day. My daughter did. She's her teacher and her have been.
What year of computer?
I'm going to go with about 5 to 7 years, maybe 9 years old.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah. While we're on it, remember these?
Oh. I saved my Motorola somewhere.
I have a StarTAC phone.
I have my original.
This is the iPhone 1? Yeah, you still got yours?
Yep.
I plugged it in. It still works. Can't watch YouTube on it. Most of the apps on it. And there was only like 10 apps on it at the time.
And by the way,
most of the apps don't work.
And the battery still sucks.
Oh, the battery. Actually, it will not. It won't turn. These days,
charge?
This is old enough. It won't turn on without being plugged in. And even then, it's iffy if it will turn on at all.
Yeah.
Hello, just a second. Hello? Yeah. I got to send a text. Hold on, guys.
Yeah.
Hold on. I'm still writing the word hello.
That's right.
There are older people in our lives who still have phones like that.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
What's speed?
All right. Last questions or comments? Anything else we should hit on?
Yes. The monthly rewards for the last 2 months. Piper and I are getting together tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern, because I did the last month's 2 days ago and then texted Piper, and he thought he was going to actually be able to get done with it last night, but wasn't able to, with the new kid, new son. So we're going to do basically 2 monthly rewards tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern, and then I'll text Daniel and then post it in the Slack. So
cool, thank you.
And
you guys should see the new son.
Dan, you were not here last week. We know we posted and talked about actually Dish Network being penalized by the government for basically, dirtying the space, $150,000. The link is still actually in our Slack channel if you want to look at it last week's.
Sure.
You probably have heard of it. I don't know. Yeah, so there's some detail there.
Cool.
All right.
All right. With that,
I
lots
have
of questions and no
something
answers.
to part with.
Okay.
If we're talking about phones, if I can find it here, just one second.
Here's the iPhone 14. Here's the iPhone 1.
But do we remember landlines?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
We do. Rotary dial.
let's see. I'll just unplug it here. Hello? 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 Yeah.
9 and 12-year-old, and yesterday I had to take the 6-year-old to a birthday party and be back in time to get the 9-year-old to gymnastics, but traffic was crazy and I was running late. So the 9-year-old has an iPad, so I tried to call her on it. She didn't have it with her. So the 12-year-old just got his own phone, so I called him and I was like, go tell your sister, and of course he was annoyed. Anyway, I go back to the house, and Mira, the 9-year-old, is like, they need to come up with like a phone that's for the whole family. That goes in the house. So if you need any person in the house, you can call that phone. Like, it's not one person's number, it's just the whole family. I was like, that is an amazing idea. But okay, hear me out. So you know how we're always like losing the remote and stuff? For this phone, let's attach it to a cord, maybe like stick it on the wall so that if there's an emergency, we can always find it. It can't leave the house. And it's for the whole family. So we're not techie people. We don't know how to like invent things. But if you're like a developer of stuff, reach out because we think it's an awesome.
Oh, God.
She's being funny, right? She knows. She's making fun of her kid.
No, she's just being dumb and doesn't know history.
Yeah, I was going to say, how old is she? You know, like how old she is.
Not old enough.
That is funny.
Yeah. Either way, we still do have a landline. For me, you know, it's free because it's a retiree. So
Everybody's
yeah. Okay. She ran away. Yeah.
That was great.
She has a book to read.
We still have the and we keep the. I'm not getting rid of the landline. Basically,
Well, you
that's
may
the
need
number
one.
I give. You know, for all the spam, all the spam calls go to the landline.
We get our satellites knocked out by the bad guys. We're all going to be at your house making phone calls. So,
Yeah.
I've got to jump to another.
Peace and love, everybody. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
See you next
Well,
week.
be safe.
See you next week.